Okay, so we got something new today. I've done quite a bit of smart home installation, mainly with Phillips Hue and Lutron controls. Stay tuned. I'm going to kind of show you what tools I used, some of the common pitfalls and what you may want to look for, and just go over the install. Stay tuned. So kind of to get started, that was my buddy for the day. Been working on this several days, but we got all of this connected, which is that direction of the house, all the way in through the kitchen. The outdoor lights, outdoor fans, etc., are all connected to smart home. And I'm using Apple HomeKit. I have Phillips Hue lights in here. These I'm going to go over really quickly. These are not the multicolored; they're just a standard light. Just screw in bulb. The cool thing is you can pair them together. So in your HomeKit, you can actually pair these two lights as one unit, so that, you know, for the main floor living room, these will turn on together and stay the same brightness. I'm gonna go here because I have kind of a combination. So I've got some fluorescents back that direction. I've got a bunch of halogen outdoor lights outside, and those turn on and off. This is a Pico switch, which is part of the replacement of the three-way. Now the cool thing on the three-way, it actually is a lot easier to wire than a traditional three-way, and mainly because inside of this panel, you literally are just putting the remote and tying all your three wires together, pushing them back in the box. So installation-wise, it's actually quicker than putting in traditional three-way, mainly because you don't have the wiring mesh. You're not wiring up additional switches. You're basically wire nutting those switches together, or the wires together. And you only really have to worry about the three-way connection on one side. So on this particular one, it's over here. So tool-wise, this is probably what I've been carrying around, going through the entire house. Basically, I just keep spare parts in this little container. This is all Fluke inclined tools. This is a Fluke tester. This, you know, keeps you from getting electrocuted. It's a little bit easier to use than a multimeter to see if you've got the right breaker turned off. And again, these are just all the extra packs of stuff. I've went through quite a bit of Lutron equipment in the past few days, and they give you like a little bag of wire nuts and screws. One thing I will say is they don't give you any extra screws. They do give you wire nuts, so be real mindful of keeping up with the screws. Another thing that will help you is wire nuts that are designed for ground through. So these basically have a hole in the top that you can actually run a wire down and twist this onto a ground connection. I'll show you where that's important over here. And I really like the brown wire nuts. I did end up using, one thing I'll warn you on, these switches that are just on and off, they require a neutral. So be prepared to even get like red or even blue wire nuts. Over on that connection over there, I actually ended up having to use a blue wire nut on the neutrals to tie the neutral to this. If you're putting in the traditional, I don't know that this is a fan control, but the dimmer control is very similar. The dimmer control actually doesn't have a neutral connection. It has basically a load and a feed side, and they're not distinguished. You can use either one, and a ground connection. This setup, so this is kind of set up for that three-way. So you've got the Pico remote, and you've got the switch. This switch does require a neutral connection. So what I did is I went through, before I did any actual installs, I pulled all these plates off and identified, do I have neutrals for that circuit? Not a neutral on another circuit, but do I have the neutral for that circuit? And I basically positioned switch here. This is where the neutral was located. And I put the remote over there with the three-way setup, and just tied my three-ways off over there and connected up three-way here. You do need to identify the load side. So that's one thing I'd recommend you doing. That's one thing the little wand is really good at. You just need to be real careful. But basically what you want to do is identify the load on your three-way. On a three-way switch, you basically have multiple wires going into it. One of those screws will have a funny color. It won't be the same color as the rest. And typically you'll actually want to tag that wire so you know which one it is. And that's all in the instructions. The instructions are relatively good. Lutron also has like another guide that you can go online and actually get like a color rather than the black and white that they send with the switches. It actually gives you a little bit more detail. So this is kind of what you do for, so this is under cabinet lighting. They do make a more expensive switch for really low power LEDs. I like that. I've got enough under cabinet lighting where that didn't seem to be a problem. These under cabinet lights turn on and off like they should without any issue. The garbage disposal is, I actually had to swap this out because I had traditional small switches rather than these flat paddle switches. So I did have to swap this out. So this is a garbage disposal. I would not put garbage disposal on one of these switches. If you look at the current ratings, they're relatively low. I think it may be on the front here. But these are within 3 or 5 amps, I think. Just be sure when you're picking these up. There we go. So basically there's the current rating of the on-off switch. So I did use this on my ceiling fans are outside. I've got 4 on this side of the house, 4 on the other side of the house, and 2 lights on a single one of these switches. And I'm not exceeding the current rating. But that kind of gives you an idea of what one of these can hold. You definitely don't want to connect up anything big. Garbage disposal, etc. You'll want to use a traditional 15 or 20 amp switch, depending on your application. So that's the under cabinet lighting switch. I basically have that mapped to the kitchen. We got a little bit of automation. So basically when you come in the house and you do turn on this, the Pico over there, it actually will turn on this whole section. I have found I probably use audio quite a bit, or I just use my computer or my phone, which is really nice. You can kind of, if you get settled down somewhere, you can kind of review through and see, if you've left a light on, etc. Out in the garage, I actually did do something kind of cool out here. I'm probably going to get more of these. Lutron does have motion control. I've not tried one of those yet. But this thing works really well. You'll see it click on here in a sec there. It just turned on. But that's the Phillips motion control, which works really well with HomeKit. It was really easy to set up. I don't think my camera's gonna focus. Kind of give you a close up of it there. Works really well with HomeKit. It basically has when motion detected event and when no motion event, which is really easy to tie. That way it'll turn the light back off when it doesn't see any motion. And that's actually tied to this switch. So you can manually turn it on and off here. If you do manually turn it on and off, it basically will override anything that the Phillips is doing. Then this is, again, that laundry switch for this room in here, which we're in the laundry room now. So kind of some common pitfalls. One thing, if you're doing these multi-gangs, one thing I kept doing over and over, these have little wings on the side. Let me go over and grab one if I can. Maybe just kind of show you where they're at. Okay, I'm just going to show you where they're at. So basically, on a switch, there's little fins on each side. There's 3 tabs. They are designed to be taken off if you need to take them off. Don't remove them if you don't need to, because you're basically taking away some of the heat sink capability of the switch. But if you have switches that are stacked side by side, it's a lot easier to actually remove those before you start wiring. So what I've gotten a habit of doing is basically on this one, basically laid lay your faceplates out. So I basically laid the faceplate out and I laid the switches in order. And I went ahead and took off those tabs. So on this one, this actually has a Pico with a plastic bracket, so there's no fins to remove because this is a remote. But on this side switch and this side of this switch, basically I remove the fins here on this side of the switch, remove them here, because if you don't, they end up overlapping or interfering and you actually can't get the switch all the way in. Another thing on these Picos, if you're putting it in a box, you don't need to remove the little plate on the plastic flat adapter. I can kind of show you this. But if you're doing a surface mount, like a true surface mount application, you'll actually want to remove it. And it's basically, there's a little panel here, so the switch slides in, but there's a little panel there that has two little tabs that you actually want to pull that piece of plastic out. So you're taking the piece of plastic out of this bracket for a full surface mount, because it does jut out the back and it will actually push too far forward and you won't get a flush mount. But this is the wall plate bracket for any of these remotes. And usually they come with like this little plastic tab. You just slide this out and put them in there. I do have some pedestals. We'll go in and look at those. I really like those for the bedrooms. So both the master bedrooms basically did a switch. So this particular one doesn't actually control the bedroom lights. You turn that switch on and it actually controls the bathroom. And it actually turns on everything in the bathroom. So when I get up in the morning, hit one switch, go get ready for the day, and can turn that back off, and everything shuts down in the bathroom. I have the lamps kind of on automation. These are Phillips Hue lamps. They work really well, and those turn on with automation. So kind of just wanted to close off here in the bathroom. This is one of the very first ones that I did. One thing I'll recommend on the plates is basically when you install these, before you put this plate on, this cover plate, they're pretty hard to get off. In order to get them off, the easiest thing to do is actually use some type of thin plastic. There are little tabs that are positioned this way. There's two of them, and they're basically here, 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 and here. You definitely, I have not had good luck coming from this side. Basically, they have a catch, and you're basically working against the catch. But if you go down through the top, that seems to work well. And once you get this off and get any of these two off, the plate will come off pretty easily. But in order to avoid that, when you have them off completely, I usually just use a flat blade screwdriver and gently pull and use a flat blade screwdriver to push the tab. And then just leave this off until you're completely done. Because you can basically take some measurements or eyeball kind of how your switches are done. You can kind of see this one's a little sunk in more than these are. So I could have done a little bit better job about getting these aligned up. This is the first one I did. But just one of the gotchas. And again, if you do need to take these off, it's actually, I used like an automotive plastic spatula tool. And that seems to be really gentle on the faceplate switches if you do need to take this back off. The nice thing about these faceplates is you basically can still access these set screws or the anchor screws for the switches. So you can make finite adjustments and get everything, both the switch, faceplate cover, and the actual mounting. You can get to both sets of those screws. Anyway, I hope this helps some folks out, and be sure to comment if you want to know more about the system or what I did. I'll be happy to do, another video or answer comments on anything that comes up. Anyway, thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.